Hello, this is Pradeep Deshpande. I'm very happy to bring this as synopsis of the workshop we will be offering beginning in the next few months. The title of the workshop is Achieve Personal Excellence and Boost Business Performance. Beginning in December in South India, teaming up with a yogi. On March 29th in Dallas, Texas, teaming with Professor Kenneth Klee, who is professor of law at the UCLA Law School. On March 1, with Konstantin Korotkov, he's professor of biophysics and computers at the St. Petersburg University of Information Technologies, Optics and Mechanics, and Krishna Maddappa, who's based in New Mexico, and he runs a center called Center for Science, Spirituality and Sustainability. And later on with Krishna Maddappa, the same workshop, probably in New Mexico in April or May timeframe. This actually is a synopsis lasting perhaps 15-20 minutes or so. It is in two parts. My part is to go over the scientific framework, and in part two, the measurement methodology and technology that Professor Konstantin Korotkov and Mr. Krishna Maddappa will go over, again in the form of a synopsis, is intended to give you the idea of a big picture, and hopefully you will get interested and excited about attending our workshops. So, I've had the courage to title this the second Copernican scale revolution. Actually, the title itself is borrowed from Professor Bill Tiller, formerly of Stanford University. And he means what he says when he is talking about a second Copernican scale revolution. So what do we mean by a Copernican scale revolution? Well, from the days of Aristotle that lasted some 2,000 years or so, it was widely accepted that Earth was at the center of our what is now called a solar system. Copernicus, a Polish astronomer in the 15th century, changed that by proposing that it's a heliocentric solar system. Sun is at the center. In the 16th century, Galileo, an Italian astronomer subscribing to that view, was actually placed under house arrest in his later years. In any event, since then the idea of a heliocentric solar system has become standard accepted practice in science, and in the last 500 years or so, the science has made tremendous strides, made tremendous progress and so on. But throughout these 500 years, it has been widely accepted by science that consciousness, emotions, intentions cannot possibly affect physical reality. In fact, Bill Tiller suggests that that is not the case, and we can glean at what is meant by looking at the equation that's on the top of this slide here, called Qt is equal to Qp1 plus alpha Qp2. Here, Qt is the total measurement, Qp1 is the current reality, alpha is the activation coefficient, and Qp2 is the psychoenergetic component. When alpha is 0, as it normally is, Qp1 is all you have, which is the current reality. But if we can make alpha non-zero, then you have access to the new reality. Now, this is nothing short of a Copernican scale revolution. Now, how does one go about testing this hypothesis? Well, if you let scientists test this hypothesis by conducting experiments at various places, chances are good that many of the experiments are not going to succeed, perhaps leading to the rejection of the hypothesis. Now, this is because science demands that every time we do the experiment, we must get the same result regardless of who's doing the experiment, how many times, and where. Now, the elephant in the room, unfortunately, is not that the hypothesis is wrong, but that the alpha depends on the level of consciousness. So, we, Deshpande and Kulkarni, myself and my colleague Dr. B.D. Kulkarni at National Chemical Laboratory in Pune, we propose that alpha is a function of level of consciousness. Now, you can test this hypothesis having some kind of a variation, some kind of a known variation in LOC, see whether you can access the new reality. So what might be some examples of the current reality and new reality? Well, current reality might be that the pH is 6. or 6.5. And the new reality is that it be 1 pH point higher to 7.5 or 7.0. Now, this is without adding any chemicals. The current reality might be that you are sick, and the new reality is that you are perfectly all right. The current reality might be that your business performance stinks, and the new reality is that your business performance is exemplary. So these are just some of the small examples of what is meant by alpha as a function of LOC, and as well as what is the current reality and what is the intended reality. Now, in order to make sense out of all this, we have to understand what is meant by the level of consciousness. There are many ways to define level of consciousness: waking state, dreaming state, sleeping state, that's one. But here I'm defining it as a combination of the three components of the mindset, S, R, and T. The definitions are on the slide. Using this definition of the level of consciousness, we say that a minimum value of S, R, and T are required for life. So no one, no matter how good or how bad, is without all these three components in some proportion. So on this scale of SRT level of consciousness, the revered ones are at the top, the wicked ones are at the bottom, and rest of us are in the middle. The quest for humanity is to rise on this level of consciousness. When we so rise to a sufficiently high level, then we maintain that alpha will become non-zero, gaining access to the new reality. So the next question is, how do we go about increasing our level of consciousness? Or for that matter, how to recognize high levels of consciousness? I'm listing three criteria here. One is, for example, the ability to discern truth from falsehood. Another might be a spontaneous affection of animals, birds, butterflies. A third might be serenity in the midst of the most unpleasant of circumstances. And fourth, and most important perhaps, is experiential. Once you have experienced a rising level of consciousness, you really don't need a second Copernican scale revolution to be convinced of the Tiller hypothesis. So how do we go about raising our level of consciousness? Well, European, Russian, and American scientists have discovered that there is something within us which has an impact on ourselves. Now, what is that within ourselves that we could possibly use to see whether that something is impacting on it? Well, it turns out to be DNA. That's the most fundamental building block of life. So these scientists have conducted experiments, the donor located in one location and the DNA located in some other location, and they've discovered that the emotions have a direct bearing on the DNA, no matter how close the DNA is to the donor or how far they are in miles, hundreds of miles, and so on and so forth. And or for that matter, the DNA belongs to the same donor or it belongs to somebody else. Now, it also the scientists have also determined that distance is of no consequence. In other words, the instant the emotions are generated, they are received at the destination without any kind of a time lag. This they have ascertained with the help of the atomic clock in Colorado many years ago. U.S. Army actually did that. So these experiments also show that everything in the universe is connected to everything else, just as it was at the time of the Big Bang, and it remains connected so even though it is not physically linked, even though they are not physically linked. And this field of energy has an enormous intelligence. Therefore, we may gain access to this field using emotions as the language of communications. Now, scientific experiments have also demonstrated that positive emotions promote life-supporting changes and negative emotions have the opposite effect. Positive emotions, as you know, strongly and positively correlate with the S component, and negative emotions strongly and positively correlate with the R and T components. So, the task of increasing our level of consciousness is clear. Consciously monitor our SRT components, make sure that our S remains high or nudges higher, and R and T remain low or nudge lower. The second approach to increasing the SRT level of consciousness is to engage in a practice whose side effect is a rise in LOC, and that is demonstrated to be, on the basis of scientific evidence, meditation. Now, in order for all this to also make sense to a Six Sigma professional like me, there has to be a scientific device with which to measure progress. Professor Konstantin Korotkov in Russia has developed such a device, and it's called the gas discharge visualization. You could look up the scientific paper on it way back in 1976 in the journal Science. This particular device has been accepted by the Russian Ministry of Health for use as a routine medical device, and it has now been tested on hundreds and hundreds of patients by hundreds and hundreds of doctors. So the implications of this work is that when LOC is so raised, it becomes possible to gain access to the intended reality because alpha becomes non-zero. When sufficiently large number of scientifically minded people are convinced, the era of second Copernican scale revolution will unfold. It's not obvious from the short video, but the scientific approach will lead to number one, improved health and wellness, enhanced creativity and innovativeness, and for organizations, better leadership and extreme exemplary business performance, and for societies, less discord and violence. I hope you have enjoyed this short video presentation, and I look forward to possibly seeing you in the workshop. And please do view part 2 of this presentation on the measurement system to assess performance and improvement. Thank you so much.